And there are reports that your own campaign manager resigned. Can you shed it?
They're not saying that, dude. What? Yeah, they're not. They're saying that 4 trans people competing in high school level athletics in each individual state is the singular most important problem. If you stop them from competing, they're not dominant by any means. I mean, how much could they be helping him if this was the original screenshot, the thumbnail? Do you see the thumbnail of this? It doesn't look like they're helping him that much. Look at his face on this bow, dude. My dude looks like shit, okay? Absolute shit.
This, after Trump's victory on Tuesday, Democrats are certainly grappling with the way forward. And after the loss Tuesday, you are one of the lawmakers who've said that Democrats are out of touch with the American people.
This is the most cowardly, baby-brained, ruthless way to present yourself as like a bold, outspoken person. Okay? It's just like you literally have put in the crosshairs a group of people that are 1% of the population that, well, trans athletes especially is like a collective total of like 100 people in the United States of America. Okay? Like, it is so insane that you would spend any time or any emphasis. Okay? Trans athletes are like 100 people in total, like collectively 100 people. And any moment spent on this whatsoever, especially as a Democrat, like if you're a Republican and you fucking spend any moment on this shit, you're a freak. If you're a Democrat, you're doubly freaky.
Saying they spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. Then, as part of that argument,
thank you for not pivoting transphobic like every other fucking left-leaning content producers. Yeah, I'm not a fucking vicious freak. What do you mean? There's never been a moment where I've compromised on human values, human rights. Like, that's just my opinion. I don't give a shit. It's so dumb. And people will say, dude, you're pandering, or you're like audience capture. Just like, what are you talking about? Have you seen the fucking internet? Being transphobic, whether you're leftist or overtly right-wing, is infinitely better for your content, okay? It's infinitely better in fostering an audience because a lot of people, especially online, openly hate trans people. They were giving you a compliment. No, I know. I'm not even responding to that person. I'm responding to like the attitude that people have towards me being a grifter in general. Does that make sense? Because people always are like, oh, Hasan, you're such a grifter.
You told the New York Times, quote, I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a...
I love that these fucking dipshits always hit this like, this is brutal honesty. This is a hard to swallow pill. It's like, wow, dude.
You are getting...
I can't believe it. Your hard to swallow pill is being transphobic. Wow. I had not heard that one before. Like, thanks, man. Bold truth teller over here. Really coming out of the gate swinging with this incredibly unique position.
Getting some pretty heavy criticism from people in your own party for something you said to the New York Times. I just want to read it for our viewers. You said Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. Girls, I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete, but as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. And your fellow Democrat from Massachusetts, Congressman John Moran, who is gay.
Yeah, by the way, this is straight up Fox News shit. Like, they're hitting the Fox News route pretty aggressively. Like, this is indistinguishable from Fox News.
Said on social media, quote, the only thing we here in Massachusetts shouldn't be afraid to say is that you should find another job if you want to use an election loss as an opportunity to pick on our most vulnerable, a councilman in your district. Call those remarks hate speech. You're getting quite a bit of pushback. I just want to hear.
Americans be like, oh, I hate the CCP. They're one party. They're not. I hate the CCP. It's a single party system. And then we'll have one Republican Party, like one media that is always dominated by the interests of capital, one party that only represents the interests of capital. And it's like, what? Kaya, come here, please. She's disappointed in you for an obvious. Oh, Can I getirebilir miyim kaybı? Of, çok uzak ya. Çok yorgunum. Anne, do you want to see Cenk talking shit to me on his election night coverage? I'll show it to you later. I'll play it at dinner. Bye bye. She said, I'm sure he has a lot more videos to show of you. As in, that's a remark stating that I make too many jokes at the expense of her brother. That's what she said. That's what her retort was. I feel like I defend Cenk quite sufficiently. That's my uncle. All right.
What you think it all means and how you're responding to this.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks, Jessica. Look, I was just speaking authentically as a parent about one of many issues where Democrats.
I'm willing to bet his daughters probably hate that he said this shit. Okay? Like, that's the funniest part about it, is that his daughters are probably getting bullied now at school. Because they're like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that my piece of shit dad just like randomly fucking decided to be transphobic and use us.
Are just out of touch with the majority of Americans. And I stand by my position, even though I may not have used exactly the right words. And I'm willing to have this debate, as I've been having with LGBTQ advocates and others, some of whom agree with me and others who don't. But we're engaging in a.
Yeah, dude. All the LGBTQ advocates are like, yeah, trans people. He's like, I'm having this debate with Caitlyn Jenner. And she keeps telling me that I should forcibly detransition young trans people. What's the problem? Like, oh, that's awesome. Thanks, man. It's very cool that he's having spirited debate on the humanity of trans people. Ay, ay, ay. You deploy a tactical, the uncle-nephew bond is unbreakable the same way someone deploys a not to be disrespectful, but a precursor to scathing critique every time. Yeah, except it's true, though. The uncle-nephew bond is unbreakable, and I do love my uncle, so it's true.
A thoughtful debate. On the other hand, some of the people, like you mentioned, are just more interested in shaming fellow Democrats, shaming the majority of voters when they simply.
Yeah, the Democratic Party needs to have a spirited debate about like whether we should also write anti-trans legislation that is specifically tailored around a collective total of like 2 people in high school. Okay, not even like that's not even dude. You cannot outflank the fucking Utah governor on this position. Like, what are we doing? Like, that guy literally went on to pass, like, I think an anti-trans bathroom bill later, too. And even he was like, I can't in good conscience vote. Like, I can't in good conscience sign into law this bill that is specifically designed to bully 4 people in this state. Okay? It's so weird. There's, literally one 13-year-old in all of Kentucky. It's so gross. These people would literally start talking about how we need to do lynchings to black people before they arrived at fucking Medicare for all. That's what this is. They are running down the racial and gender minorities until, like, they're running down the carousel of marginalized groups. Okay. And slowly but surely, they're just every fucking election cycle, they'll be like, okay, trans people, we wrote them out. They're done. We're going to also write anti-trans bills. Okay. And then next up is Latino people, which they've started already, obviously. Okay. Wait, they already did that with the with their own version of the border bill. Okay. Yeah. Republicans dominate discourse so hard that if they like actively launched a campaign against miscegenation in a couple years, Democrats would follow suit 4 years after the fact. It's kind of crazy to think about. And it's not that far off, the anti-miscegenation stuff, if Clarence Thomas, who was married to a white woman as a black man, gets his wishes.
We don't meet their ideological purity test. And these are the same people who told us to defund the.
How's the border security bill writing out Latinos when that's what the Latinos apparently want? I mean, it doesn't matter if the Latinos voted. They still voted minority for the Republican Party. But it still doesn't matter. That is literally the fucking bill. That wasn't Dobbs' decision to send. It was every single fundamental right except miscegenation. Oh, shit, my bad. Clarence Thomas is protecting miscegenation.
Police who told us that there wasn't a problem at the southern border, who told us that inflation was transient, whatever that means. And the same people who attacked me when I said that Biden should step aside because he was going to lose this election. So we have to be willing to have these debates as the party. I mean, the Republicans are banning books. Democrats are banning debate. And if we don't have this debate now and come up with a winning strategy going forward, then the Republicans are going to wipe the floor with us in January, just like they did last Tuesday.
But there is so much, to your point.
Yeah, it's called defending trans people and exposing the fucking silliness of the Republican Party. The Republicans do this with everything. They do this with abortion. Trans rights are damn near identical to the conversation surrounding, the Republican conversation surrounding abortion access. There is well-established scientific precedent or scientific consensus on allowing people to have this medical process readily available to them. It's life-saving, just as abortion is. And yet, Republicans have decided, I don't want that anymore on both of these issues. And they are actively stopping people now. And the Democrats are like, yeah, you're right, actually. Sorry. I agree. It's fucking insane. There is never a moment where you have to cave on this shit. You just have to always be like, why do you care about this? Why? Let him explain how fucking stupid they are. Let him talk about how, like, the kids are being trans. No, they're not. That's not how this works. Show the fucking graph of left-handed people. That's it. Like, you have to attack the root cause of where the root cause, quote unquote, which is not a real problem to begin with, but you have to get them to explain to you why it's a problem. And because there is no real problem there, okay, as long as you walk them through the steps of describing to you what this real harm is, they're always going to look like fucking silly little monsters. That's it. Oh, if you detransitioned forcibly every trans person and caused them all to commit suicide, America would not be better off. Okay? It would be worse off. That would be ridiculous. Like, that would be unnecessarily and unimaginably cruel. Okay? And besides that, it's not like all the transphobic people are automatically going to get money in their pockets. They did this with the border too. These kinds of fucking idiotic concessions are so stupid.
There is a lot of pushback from within your own party, and there are reports that your own campaign manager resigned. Can you shed it?
They're not saying that, dude. What? Yeah, they're not. They're saying that for trans people competing in fucking high school level athletics in each individual state is the singular most important problem. If you stop them from competing, they're not dominant by any means. If you stop them from competing, what changes in your life? Are things better? Was there any immediate material improvement in your life? No. You just wrote legislation to dunk on 4 teenagers. Congratulations. That's it. And I know this is not a real issue because originally they did this by writing bathroom bills. And those bathroom bills, specifically in North Carolina, were deeply unpopular. So they went back to the drawing board and found one other, like, they found that, like, anti-trans sentiment as a standalone, is unsuccessful. 64% of the country believes trans people are being disproportionately targeted. This is facts. So these right-wing groups, like Family Values or whatever the fuck, all these like psychotic, rabid, Christo-fascist, cultish right-wing think tanks went back, okay, and were like, how do we dunk on trans people? And they found in their focus groups the most successful narrative that penetrated to the broadest group of Americans was not if you just openly were like, yeah, fuck trans people, we should just stop them from being trans, but instead, if you associate it with one concept that Americans do believe is a meritocracy: sports and children, okay? Children's sports. This was all done in broad daylight, mind you. Like, this isn't a secret conspiracy. The New York Times actually has some pretty solid reporting on this. Like, they openly covered exactly, I think it was like Family Values or whatever the fuck the name of like the Christian group is. But they specifically focus tested different types of to find which would be the best at reaching out to as broad of a population as possible. And that's what happened. They found out that sports focus on the family is the name of the group. Thank you. Americans believe sports is the last bastion of true meritocracy. They also don't understand trans people, so they think trans people are like cynically becoming trans, okay? So when you pair those two things up, you can make a convincing argument that trans people are actually not really trans, but they're doing it for attention, and they're doing it to like win swim meets at the high school level, okay? That's it. It wasn't necessarily because like Americans fucking want to kill trans people. Many Americans just don't give a shit about trans people. They think they're weird, but they don't care. But when you basically present trans people as like cheating in sports, then they do care, because they're like, oh, I care about sports. And if you especially do it, especially paired up with like children's sports, that is the most prescient way of doing transphobic commentary. There's also a reason why I never talk about that, because, you know, it is something that polls at like 80%. It's a stupid fucking argument to have, especially because, like I said, the collective total of trans people participating in sports in each individual state would come to like 100 people, okay? All trans people make up less than 1% of the population. The number of like athletes that are doing that is so low. And there is no immediate advantage. However, due to the way that people look at due to the misogynistic way that people analyze the situation, where they're like, well, men are on average stronger than women, right? And there is like, I guess, biological truth to that to a certain degree. They package this up in a misogynistic fashion as well. Or they're like, oh, it's just like a man that is trying to beat a woman. So all of this works in unison, and this is how you arrive at a successful anti-trans campaign, okay? I think the funniest part about it is that these are people who openly say they don't care about women's sports every other day of the week, but God forbid, when it comes to trans issues, they're like, oh, well, what about women's sports? Like, but you don't care about women's sports. The fuck do you mean? I've heard you say nobody watches WNBA. They don't deserve any money whatsoever. So how the fuck are you going to act like you care about women's sports now? The fuck? You never have, and you never will. They don't care about women's sports at all. They're just using it to cynically dunk on trans women. That's it. It's not a real problem. However, it is successful enough as a media narrative that it certainly causes people to immediately get on board with it. Talk to any normie who's never met like a trans person, or even like normies who know trans people, about this issue, and they'll be like, yeah, I don't think trans women should participate with cis women. They'll say that. It's at 80%, okay? It polls at fucking 80%. The only goal of this messaging campaign is to basically be openly transphobic. That's it. That's it. The only goal of this is to straightforwardly just find a way to talk about trans people in a negative fashion. So when Democrats like Seth Moulton eat that bait and hit the issue from that right-wing framing, I lose my fucking mind. It's so frustrating. Nobody gives a shit about this. Please stop, okay? Let people live. Worry about your own damn self. This is an idiotic argument that you've been primed into fucking talking about endlessly. Stop being fucking weird. Those are God's children. That's what Andy Bashar said.
Any light on that? And was this kind of where you two parted?
No, I mean, the reality is that there's some very public pushback, while the vast majority of messages and emails and texts and conversations I've been having on the street are actually incredibly supportive. And this is all from fellow Democrats, from colleagues.
He's like, hell yes, Dad. Keep it up, brother.
In Congress, from some pretty senior members of the party and whatnot, who just say, you're exactly right, Seth. This is our...
Yeah. On the legislative side, in terms of regulation, anti-trans legislation, or controlling who is trans and who is not, also harms cis women more frequently than it harms trans women. There are simply more cis women out there than there are trans women. So what a lot of people don't recognize is that when you want to figure out who's trans and who's not trans in high school athletics, you have to start doing shit like penis inspection day. That's literally what, people are advocating for. Ohio. Can you imagine a world where some fucking freaky ass, pervert ass, disgusting ass parent that's on the opposing team just says that your daughter is trans, and now you got to get someone to do fucking penis inspection day on your daughter. Like, what a fucking psychotic situation. Are we going to do hormone blood sampling on teenagers? Now, the thing is, for example, with the Iman Khalif situation, when like the trans panic narratives go so far that people start saying that cis women are trans as well because they don't fit like the rigid gender stereotype. They start investigating people. That harms cis women too. Problem is, a lot of the fucking transphobes are misogynistic, so they don't give a fuck. They don't care about hurting women. Cis or trans, doesn't matter. A lot of transphobia, because trans people are at the intersection of all any different matter of oppression, they don't give a fuck. Black athletes, black female athletes get this a lot too, Caster Semenya and the like. And that doesn't matter to anybody either because most of those people are also racist. They're misogynistic and racist and transphobic, so they don't give a fuck if a black woman gets harmed in the process, a cis black woman gets harmed in the process. And that's it. That's it.
Our problem. You know, we try to cancel people rather than actually having debates about issues that Americans care about. And this is much bigger than just trans issues. I mean, this is about the economy. How is it that the Republicans are doing better on the economy, are more trusted on the economy, when Trump just wants to cut taxes for his billionaire friends and put massive tariffs in place that will raise prices, will increase inflation for everyday Americans? I mean, how is it that when Trump just wants to break up millions of families and communities across America by having these mass deportations, the Republicans are more trusted on the border? We've got to be willing to get back in touch with the majority of Americans, and we can't do that if we do all this preaching and not listening. We got to listen to American voters, engage them in this discussion. And what does it say to American voters if people in our own party can't even have this debate?
Well, and so, but to that end, did you lose staff over this debate?
No, I mean, there's this, some people have been critical, and that's fine. I am someone who always encourages people to be critical. In fact, one of the interview questions I always ask is, what are you going to do if you disagree with me? And I want people to say, I'm going to disagree with you. I want to have a debate. I think we get stronger by that debate. It's a value that I live upon. I value, and is a mission. It's one of the critical values that we have on our team. I literally hire people who are going to have different opinions than me. So that's fine. Like, we have these debates all the time on my team, but the concern is that we're not willing to have them as a party. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to keep losing elections if we can't do that.
Do you think this specific issue is a big part of why Trump won?
I mean, look, the sad reality is that there's polling out that shows that, at least in one poll among swing voters, it was literally the number one issue. And you can say that was because the Republican ads were effective or whatever else. But I think there's another important point here, which is that Trump is going to try to attack trans people. He is going to attack minorities across the board. The Republican agenda is legitimately dangerous for a lot of people in America. And
So when he was talking about the border bill, like the right-wing border bill that the Republicans are presenting, mass deportation, why does he take issue with it? It seems like the majority wanted that. They voted for it. So why are you standing against that? If you don't have issues with the trans stuff that Republicans are presenting, and you're literally using their talking points for the trans panic narrative, why don't you start talking about how we should do mass deportations too? Perhaps it's because you do agree 100% with the transphobic narratives and you agree 70% with the anti-border shit. Yeah, a bunch of his aides quit after this, by the way. Democratic rep said Moulton's top aide resigns after his comments on transgender athletes. Moulton doesn't apologize. Yeah. He's like, I'm under attack. Why is this uneducated idiot on TV? Why are they platforming him? Because he's a congressperson who's being transphobic. If you're a congressperson who's transphobic, they won't shit on you. Transphobia does not disturb the existing hierarchies. Anti-capitalist sentiment does. Anti-imperialist sentiment does. That's why when Rashida Tlaib comes out and says, free Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, everyone universally dunks on her, okay, in mainstream news. But when a white man a congressperson from Massachusetts comes out and says, fuck trans people. Nobody dunks on them at all. They actually present it as bold truth telling. They're presented as hard to swallow pills. The real hard to swallow pill that requires bravery to speak is going against the grain, going against something that every outlet takes for granted, American imperialism. That's the real hard to swallow pill, but nobody wants to swallow it. Transphobia is an easy to swallow pill. Super easy.
We're not going to be effective at defending these people and their civil rights, their access to health care, things that are really important to them, as I've heard from many advocates in their community over the past several days, if we don't actually put ourselves in a position of power. Because God knows the Republicans aren't going to stand up to Trump. They're not going to protect their fellow Americans when he goes after their rights. I mean, just what about women and reproductive freedom? I mean, that should really scare people because Republicans and Trump are absolutely going to try to ban abortion nationwide. And we're not going to be able to stop that if we don't start winning elections and get back in power.
And I want to ask you, because you did.
He's like, we got to start winning elections by being transphobic so that we can defend trans people. Okay, majority of Americans voted for Donald Trump. They don't give a fuck about abortion, dog. So what's up? Are you going to retriangulate on that issue too? The answer is yes, by the way. I know the answer, Chad. These people do not have any real convictions, or maybe they did at a certain point, but being a machine politician for decades has caused them to erode that sensibility. They have no positions whatsoever, especially on the Democratic Party. They are spineless. The only thing they care about is channeling the ideological position of the Democratic Party. I promise you it goes in the opposite direction as well. If there was a Trumpian style figure that magically was able to overtake the Democratic Party and show every single Democrat that you can win with left economic populism without abandoning any of these fucking marginalized groups, and put up LeBron numbers, put up Donald Trump numbers, put up better numbers than Donald Trump, every single one of these Democrats would be talking like they are part of the regime. These people are simple placeholders. The problem is, due to capitalism, due to the oligarchy, due to corporate interests being represented by the Democratic Party for years and years, they're just stuck in this hole. I promise you, Seth Moulton, if there was a Donald Trump style leftist that dominated the Democratic Party in the same way, obviously there's more material issues, more material hurdles that get in the way of such a thing. But let's say it did happen, he would be talking like Bernie Sanders. The problem is those material hurdles that I mentioned get in the way of a person like Bernie Sanders winning, and then we never hear these guys champion that position. We never hear the base of the Democrats champion